a lot of customers had been with the business on sort of long-standing contracts for many years, and there wasn't much change. Things have changed now. We've had to adapt, modernise and move at pace. I think in the last 5 years there's been a step change. We obviously try to make sure that our reach is wide. So they're using social media much more. We're not just using standard recruiting practices, but I still think there's a lot we can do. I would say it's more the norm. I think we have a voice. How do we change it at pace?
Welcome to another episode of Women in Ports. I'm really excited to have Pamela Smyth, the Chief Legal and Property Officer from Forth Ports, today with me. So welcome very much, Pamela.
Thank you very much, Raj. I'm delighted to be here.
So as you know, Pamela, the issue of diversity is really important to me, and it's something that we spoke about quite a bit. It'd be really great for the audience to know maybe a bit about your journey. How did you join the ports world, and what attracted you to it?
Okay, well, I'm happy to do that. I was previously in the property sector for 23 years, and I never actually anticipated leaving. And then for a variety of reasons, I was leaving that business and this opportunity popped up. And what attracted me to it in particular was the fact that there was still a property connection. I felt that my own skill set would be helpful in a port sector because obviously it's built upon land. And we're an island nation, so inevitably it's absolutely at the core of what we do. So it seemed to be a natural fit for me. I could apply my own skills, but at the same time I could learn some new skills because obviously I didn't know anything about maritime law and I had to learn all of that. And when I met Charles Hammond, who was then the CEO, he just painted such an sort of enthusiastic picture, not just of the history of ports, but also the progressive side of ports. So all of that was part of the package for me. And it's turned out to be exactly as I expected, if indeed it's actually better.
Yeah. And so how long have you now been at Forth Ports?
So I've been there almost 13 years.
Yeah.
And I've seen quite a bit of change. But the thing that strikes you when you first arrive is just the scale of everything.
Yeah.
It's bustling, it's noisy, it's like a little city. And there's so much going on. And connecting to what we're doing for the British economy is really exciting. You know, being a lawyer, you can often just get stuck in a room where you're doing legal documents all the time, but you have to go out and about and understand what the business does because that's the only way you're going to really make a difference and do your job properly. So from the start, I thought it was fantastic. The energy, the enthusiasm. There's a lot of people who've been in the business for a long time, and that is one of the things I think we might get on to talking about. It's a place where people have jobs for life, and that is a good thing. But at the same time, we need to be reaching out to the next generation and bringing in new talent and sort of changing the face of it a little bit.
So just thinking about when you said that, you came into the industry 13 years ago and Charles was quite instrumental in persuading you. How did you even know the job came up?
Well, I was approached by a headhunter. And in actual fact, by a strange coincidence, I had been approached some sort of 8 years previously. And I really had always kept it in my head. I thought that's a really exceptional job. And these jobs they don't come along, that often. If you're an in-house lawyer and you're in a commercial role, you're always looking for something that really sort of excites you. I didn't want to be in a bank where I thought it was very much sort of credit and process driven. I'm not suggesting these jobs aren't interesting because evidently they are. But I wanted to be somewhere where, I was part of the team that was actually making a difference. Yeah. So I attend meetings where they're talking about, sort of operational matters. And that really shifts the dial for me because I feel I can contribute. So you're all given a voice. It's not just about your own skill sets and your own professional qualification. You've got a broader involvement, and that's what's made a difference for me. And actually, I would say that it's getting better all the time. We use AI, we use data, lots of these things we're using now to actually just do things in a more efficient way. So it's a really exceptional industry. It's a brilliant business, and I'd encourage anybody to look at it if there's an opportunity came up.
So just think about your impressions. You've been in the industry for 13 years now. How's it changed and how's it evolved from maybe when you first set foot in it to today?
I think it's mainly about the sort of customer flows, the customer demands. When I first started, I think it was the case that a lot of customers had been with the business on sort of long-standing contracts for many years, and there wasn't much change. things have changed now. You have to work harder to keep customers. There's more competition. People are looking for, automation. They're looking for different things within the business. So we've had to adapt, modernize, and move at pace. And in addition to that, we've obviously looked at the size of our own business and, what we can do in terms of offering a service to our customers. And we've bought additional land. So when I first started, there wasn't any of that, and it's just happened because we're trying to grow. We're trying to sort of offer a really good quality service. Service excellence is at the core of what we do. And we want to get into the key markets. So in order to be able to do that, it isn't just about geographical location. That's obviously a big part of it. But it's making sure that your facilities are at the top end of what customers are looking for. But you do go through, from my own personal perspective, legal discussions, legal documents are taking a lot longer to get over the line. And I think people are just looking more at what's in the contracts. In the past, a contract would be written and somebody would sign it locally and that was it. And it was just put in a drawer. People are looking at it more forensically. And I think that's a good thing because I think it's important that everybody knows what they're signing up to. So it takes a bit longer, but the ultimate product is better for it, I think.
And so for the audience purpose, for them to understand, but Forth Ports is pretty much two sides. So you've got the Tilbury side and then you've got the Scotland side assets, right?
Right.
When we're looking at recruiting for the skill set in both those locations, can you maybe share some of the practices that you guys share in order to get a diverse set of skills joining the business?
Well, I think I'll have to pay compliment to our HR team because I think in the last 5 years there's been a step change. We obviously try to make sure that our reach is wide. So they're using social media much more. We're not just using standard recruiting practices. But I still think there's a lot we can do. We need to learn from when we're not getting a broad spectrum of applicants. It's a discussion we just had yesterday at our exec board. It's not just about us wanting to do something. We have to make sure that the message is getting out there and we're reaching the right people. And I think there's a bit of messaging we probably have to work on. I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but your work will be very important to this, Raja. But I suspect there's a sense that it's quite old-fashioned, the port sector, and therefore it doesn't appeal, to a broader sort of, not just gender, but broader social diversity. And that simply isn't the case. You can only look, you've recently visited Tilbury. Coming through the gates, you can see it's a highly automated industry. We've got all the sort of latest technology. It isn't historic anymore. We've absolutely got to have a nod to history. We wouldn't be there. And if you look at our lock gates in Tilbury, they've only recently just been upgraded. They've been there for a long, long time. So you've got the old quayside, you've got a lot of historic infrastructure, but we're absolutely looking at that all the time to make sure it is modernised. So in Scotland, very similar. I think the Tilbury demographic is particularly challenging, probably. This smaller pool, I think, in terms of people who are wanting to go into those kind of jobs. But we're absolutely doing our best to shift the dial. We have, sort of career days. We have apprenticeship training. We are doing all that we can to get the message out there. But I absolutely hope that you can help us to get that message out there even louder and clearer. In Scotland, I don't think we've perhaps had the same challenges necessarily because our ports are in different locations. And the Scottish sort of economy is such that the employees are very attracted to working in those ports. They're core to the sort of the economy, as indeed they are in Tilbury. But it's just, I think that particular location has proved to be a bit more challenging. You may say otherwise, but that's my sense of how it is.
It's interesting you say that because we've had this conversation as well. So I actually had the privilege to visit Tilbury, and I left Tilbury with a new sense of admiration and pride. In fact, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I said, I wish I was working at Tilbury. And somebody who's worked at Port of London Authority just across the river, I didn't appreciate how far you guys have come, but actually the people on the ground, how talented they are.
Talented.
So talented and have such an appetite to bring about change. But sometimes I feel that maybe we aren't the best storytellers in our industry. I think sometimes what comes across is port jobs are dirty jobs. support jobs are labour intensive, but actually that's changed. And Tilbury is a real fine example of that when we talk about automation and we're looking at technology and how we're advancing that, right?
I agree with that. And I think that is definitely changing. I mean, there are still some, jobs of necessity when you're going to vessels or you're going into the hold, which are perhaps more challenging. But, we're always looking at ways of improving how we do these operationally. And, we've got an excellent bank of straddle carriers for the container terminal is just one example. But I agree with you. I think this is about messaging. And I'm delighted if I can do anything to get the message out there that not only is this a fantastic location, but it's actually when you come through the gates at Tilbury, it just kind of hits you hard. The scale of it is fantastic. We have lots of, good progressive policies. Our sort of talent team are always looking to make sure that they bring in the best talent. We, have a graduate program. We do the apprenticeship. So it's all about making that even better. So I think we've done fantastically well. We've made significant strides in recent years, but there's always more that you can do. And I think when you look around the room, and I think, all of us experienced that. I sat in a room yesterday where out of 9 people, I was the only woman. So there's a lot needs to be done, but it isn't just about gender. And I absolutely understand that's what we're here to talk about today. It's much broader. It's ethnicity, it's, wider neurodiversity and social diversity. We have to make sure that we're reaching all of these, sectors. And there's a bit more we need to do in messaging. I think we would recognise that challenge, and we're up for it. We absolutely want to take it head on.
I think we had a discussion earlier about in order to achieve true diversity in all forms, one shouldn't be more important than the other, right? And we should be bringing everybody together on that journey. But just thinking about, for this conversation's purpose, looking at gender diversity and the fact that you're a senior female within the industry, and not just the ports industry, but you also have the hat of the president of the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce, which is impressive for a lot of young women looking up and seeing you as a role model. Do you sometimes feel that there's a bit of a pressure of being that woman, and sometimes your achievements sometimes being overlooked just because you're a woman, as opposed to, well, actually, I'm a chief legal and property officer, and I'm a president, and I've done X, Y, and Z, and I'm a lawyer, and I've done this, but actually, the woman part is secondary as opposed to anything else. I mean, can talk about that a little bit, that pressure maybe.
I don't feel a pressure as such. I think it is important to be a role model, whoever you are.
Yeah. And
I was brought up to absolutely believe that I could be the best that I could be. And I had 2 brothers. As you know, sadly, one passed away recently. But in our household, there was no difference. Our parents treated us exactly the same. I was given exactly the same sort of education opportunity, encouraged to do exactly the same things. And I've never felt in the workplace that my gender has held me back. But I do recognise the statistics don't support that. But part of that is historic, part of that is about society. And I think it's now, as you're doing a fantastic job here thinking about how do we change things? How do we change it at pace? Because it's obviously taken a while to even get to where we are. So yes, I absolutely want to be a role model, but I've never, as I say, looked at it from the point of view that, I'm a woman, therefore, I've got to constantly voice the fact that I'm a woman. I do think it's about making connections, being good at what you do, being, sort of collegiate, all of these things. So whether I was a man or a woman, that's what I bring to the discussion. And our board discussions are like that. We have an exec board, but we also have a main board. And all of these, sort of areas are discussed. It's absolutely a top priority. I mean, clearly, health and safety is our number one priority. But alongside that, we are very, very attuned to the fact that there's more that we can do. So I'm happy to help in any way I can.
So just thinking about the boardroom, and you've obviously got a lot of experience of being in the boardroom and many years of that. How do you think the role of women has evolved in the boardroom?
Well, I would say it's become, frankly, more acceptable. I mean, I don't mean that in the sense that it wasn't acceptable before, but there's no doubt in my mind that when I first went on to a board, and I went on in the capacity as a company secretary, I wasn't a director, but it was in my previous job, it was very unusual. So I think it is much more the norm now, but it's still a very small percentage overall. And I think they bring something quite exceptional to the boardroom. So all the obvious things that you have your sort of director skills and capabilities, that's a given. But on top of that, I think they bring a different perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's important around any table, whatever the meeting is, whether it's a master planning meeting, whether it's a board meeting, whether you're just having a chat in the kitchen, having a bit of perspective is really important. And that's why I say to you, I think that social diversity is actually really key to all of this, because what we don't want, and I think in the past we've had, through recruitment practices, through going to university, there has been a tendency that certain social groups got preferential treatment, or it was easier for them to get into these positions. I think that's changing, and I think that's really important. So I would say it's more the norm. I think we have a voice. We don't need to have a voice that's like a man's voice. I absolutely don't believe that that's necessary. I just want to be myself, authentic. Bring something to a discussion and speak when I've got something to contribute. There's too much pressure sometimes, I think, for people to speak when that you don't actually have anything to contribute. So it's about that. And I would say it's not a massive change, but just a little bit of a change in style, I think.
So just thinking about your colleagues at Fourth Ports, all the assets, sites, and just thinking about some of their attitudes and how they see things, and how some see you as a role model, men and women. What would be some of the advice that you would give to those young people coming up the ranks and saying that, we want to be like Pamela? What was that journey looking like for you to get from starting as a graduate to where you are sitting in the boardroom? How can we bring more, young people, I would say, men and women, onto that boardroom?
Well, I think it is about authenticity. Be yourself. Obviously, there's an expectation that whatever role you're in, you've got the skill sets, but you'll also be supported with additional training and development. I mean, that's something that's really been worked on in the last few years. So, have a goal, decide what it is you're trying to do, learn from the people around the room, have a mentor, do all of these kind of things. And don't ever assume that you can't, go for something. If an opportunity comes up and you're really interested in it, speak to somebody, discuss it with them. So from my journey was very much as opportunities arose, either somebody encouraged me to go forward for them, or I put myself forward in my own right. And I think have the confidence to know that you've got the core skills. And of course, sometimes the step up will be big, but it's good. It's good to be challenged. And when you're challenged, that often brings out the best in people. And I would encourage anybody not to look at it from the point of view of, I'm here and that's going to be me forever. Always be looking at what the next opportunity is. And work with somebody, work with a mentor, work with somebody in a senior position to give you guidance as to how you can be the best that you want to be. And I've always found that, people are receptive and encouraging and supportive. I mean, I've had lots. I mean, Charles Hammond, for example, a very good mentor, actually. And I know that that's something he's looking to do outside of Fourth Ports. But within the business, we've got some really supportive senior people. And our shareholders are very supportive. So that environment exists. So if you're somebody coming into Fourth Ports next week, I'd say to you, seize all of the training that you're offered, get out there and meet as many people as you can. It is an open door policy. It's a flat surface in the sense that you will meet people that in the past you would never have met. Nobody's off limits. Stuart Wallace, our CEO, his door is always open unless he's in a meeting. And, he's probably spoken to and met with many people, even in his short time as CEO. So grab those opportunities, ask the right questions, and be ambitious.
Yeah. So have you ever had any self-doubt? So within you, when you're going through those positions, especially when you're taking that step up, or there's a decision that you're thinking, that was quite a difficult decision. Have you ever had self-doubt? And if so, how have you managed that?
I mean, I think it's only natural to have some doubts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be, it'd almost be wrong not to have. Yeah. I think you have to assess your skill sets. And whatever you're doing, you will always be missing something. But it's about, how do I get those skill sets? So when I came to Fourth Ports, my concern was I knew nothing about the maritime industry or maritime law. And I came through the door and I thought to myself, well, you know how to deal with that. Learn about it. So I often read up about it. And I would say I now have a really good grasp of it. And therefore, I feel quite privileged that I've got a knowledge that lots of other people don't. So you can nearly always add to your skill sets. But if you've got the enthusiasm, if you've got the drive, if you're interested in the sector, I think you can pretty much do anything. I've not felt so anxious about something that I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I think the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce was a very interesting opportunity when it came up. And it was actually Charles Hammond who encouraged me to take that one forward. And over 5 years, I've now become the president. There are moments where I think the self-doubt, if any, I have is about having enough time to do it justice. But actually, I've managed to make the time. We recently had our annual business awards. That was just a couple of weeks ago. I did the opening speech. And there's always that little bit of 600 people. Goodness, that's quite outside of my comfort zone. But actually, I really enjoyed it. So I think push yourself, test yourself. And, if something's concerning you, speak to somebody. Don't bottle it up.
Yeah. So just think about the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. What can we learn from other industries? Because I'm sure through the chamber, you've experienced different industries, far wide and close to maritime. What can we learn from other industries to make our industry a little bit more inclusive?
I think you can learn a lot. I actually think there's more in common than there isn't. What we're noticing, because obviously in the chamber we represent our members. The membership can be small businesses through to medium to large corporates, and obviously we're one of the large corporates in Forth Ports. But when you're having a lot of these round table meetings, all of that gets discussed and aired, and you learn a lot. Somebody might simply say, as one of my fellow directors did, have you thought about actually going out into schools if you're not able to, this was to another business, if you're not able to attract the right type of person for this particular role? And the kind of light bulb went on with this other organisation. They said, well, I haven't really thought about that. We've always just done traditional advertising. So I think other industries, other skill sets, other people who have been exposed to different things can bring huge knowledge to you. And I think the sharing of knowledge is one of the things that I find the most valuable. And I feel that from the port sector, I can bring knowledge. I've talked about data. I've talked about the importance of AI, all sorts of things. Talked about, sort of the whole environmental piece in ESG. I've been able to bring what we are doing and how that impacts on us and help smaller businesses. So it's quite broad ranging, but I would say you're learning all the time from all the different participants and all the events they hold.
So just thinking about behaviours and social norms. So the ports industry is traditionally known as quite a masculine industry, and the current unofficial figure is 15% of women make up the UK ports figure, UK ports industry. What's the let me reframe that. Is there a strategy at Forth Ports to maybe bring up those numbers, or is it something that you just want to do organically without doing without having set targets, essentially?
So there's an absolute ambition, but I don't think that it's in anybody's interest where you have sort of tick boxes and quotas. What we want to do is ensure there's equality of opportunity is how I phrase it, actually. And I think to the conversation we had earlier on this morning, I think we need to reach more people because there are no barriers. We'd be delighted to have the best people to do the jobs possible. But we do see a smaller number of applicants, either from certain ethnic groups or from, the different genders. It's much smaller. And therefore we have to shift the dial a bit. Now, it could be about the messaging. Maybe we're not using the right mediums. If we're using recruitment agencies, maybe we need to think about that differently. But our own talent team do that. They do use LinkedIn, quite extensively and other sort of platforms. So I do think it's improving, but we're still getting smaller numbers in terms of applicants. So that's the thing I think we really need to focus on. How do we identify why we're not getting those applicants, and what can we do to address that? That's for me is the key thing.
So just if thinking about misconceptions, what do you think the biggest misconception is about the ports industry?
I definitely think it's that it's old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And obviously it's steeped in history. Of course.
Yeah.
So we can't lose that. And as you move around the estate, you would have seen it yourself when you came to visit. You've got a kind of real mixture. You've got some really old-fashioned buildings, and then you've got some really modern buildings. And all I would say is that that doesn't mean that we're not progressive thinkers. I think all of the ports would say the same thing, that they're, looking to improve all of their infrastructure, all of their facilities, so that it's, fit for the next 100 years. So that's what we're doing. And of course, in Tilbury, we bought additional land and we created a new port. So, you can't do that if you don't have the underlying skill set. So we've got really skilled people within the business that you have identified yourself. So that's what I would say.
So it's quite good. It's quite interesting when you talk about Tilbury too, for example, and you bought this land, and there are jobs out there, and there's some really incredible jobs out there, especially at Tilbury. If we went for that misconception about the old buildings, I don't think I would ever experience how wonderful the ports world is. But Tilbury is quite unique because when I visited, I was quite impressed actually that you take safety very seriously, and you take female safety very seriously too, because don't you guys have key cards for female only changing spaces, shower facilities and toilets, and that's quite
100%.
unique. That's quite unique. I mean, I visited a lot of ports. I haven't seen that as of yet.
That's good to know. We like to be pioneering, and also we have bespoke female safety gear. So it's, I think the thing is that the team, because we did speak about this again yesterday, the exec board, the team are very attuned to all of that. And it isn't just that. It's a case of, we like ideas from everybody. So if you've got an idea, if you've got a concern, if you've got a question, please raise it with us. Stuart Wallace, the CEO, has only recently done his roadshows, and, you get a real sort of mix of questions that you could ask. So no question is a silly question. We're delighted to get questions, observations, but safety is absolutely the core of what we do. But that's a really, really good example.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
And it was actually the men who told me about that one, actually.
Good for them.
And they're the ones who emphasized about the female safety. So I was actually really impressed about that. Just thinking about aspiring women who want to join the ports industry, in aiming at leadership positions, non-ports who want to come in, what would be the route, let's say at Tilbury or Forth Ports? Can we maybe go for a bit of a journey if let's say I say, hey, Pamela, I fancy joining the board up at Forth Ports. How do I do that? What would success look like? What would that plan look like?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I mean, and if I could just quote a couple of examples. So our Chief Operating Officer, Paul Dale, has worked his way up right from, the shop floor right up to being the Chief Operating Officer. And so there are no barriers in terms of your progression if you develop the skills. From a woman's perspective, I think the important thing comes back to what I've said before. I like to sell the message that this is a fantastic place to work. It's committed to diversity and inclusion. It's a fantastically skilled group of people. We've done some amazing things over the last 13 years that I've been there and beyond. And we're really looking to the future. We're very keen to grow the business further. We're keen to sort of look at new technologies, make data and AI use, sort of integral to what we do. So if you are looking for an interesting role, then please look at the ports sector, and you'll be very welcome at Forth Ports. You'll be given the training that you need if you don't automatically have it. So yes, there are apprenticeship routes, there are graduate routes, or you could come in at a management level. There's always supervisory and management roles being advertised. So please, if I can just say this, don't think of the ports sector as something that's really old-fashioned. It's absolutely not. It's key to what we do. As I said at the start, we're an island nation. We absolutely have to have good quality ports. We want the best people working in them because that's good for everybody. So please look at the sector. And, I'm delighted to sort of mentor anybody, to speak to anybody, just to sort of sell the story.
Your inbox is going to be full after all of this.
Get it redirected.
And what does Forth Ports look like in 5 years for you?
Well, in 5 years, I would say that we have started to improve the sort of diversity piece. I think there's a real opportunity there. We've got lots of roles that we need to fill. Our HR team are looking very carefully at making sure that, they've got the reach that they need. In Tilbury specifically, we want to sort of sell the message about the location, the scale, the opportunities. So I would hope it's growing. That's our goal, is to grow year on year and at quite a scale. Who knows? Maybe we'll have bought additional land or other infrastructure. So it's got a great future ahead of it, and not just in Tilbury. In Scotland, we've got fantastic ports there and a fantastic management team. And again, we're looking to grow it. And there's lots of sort of geopolitical challenges at the moment, but I would hope we can come through those, and this sort of the growth of the business will continue on that sort of scale.
Looking back at your journey, is there anything you would have done differently, or a lesson you wish you've learned?
Yeah, I guess
you're known earlier, so
I mean, not a massive seismic change. I think actually probably I'd go back to when I left school, and I'm of a generation, if I'm allowed to say that, where if you were reasonably smart as a girl, you were sort of pigeonholed into certain types of university training or jobs, and it had to be vocational. I would, if I was talking to my 17-year-old Pamela, I'd be saying, look, actually don't listen to that. Follow your heart. If you want to do English lit, as I wanted to do, or history at university, do it. Because actually, it's about the skill sets that you develop in terms of assimilating information, doing your dissertations, learning more broadly at university that gets you ready for the next stage. Don't assume that you have to have a vocational training to do that. Within the business role itself, I guess only just, not to be a little kinder to myself. I'm probably a slight workaholic. And that's not because I've felt I've had to do it to prove myself or anything like that. It's just my nature. It's in my DNA. And maybe just sometimes to take a little bit of time out and make sure that you're rounded in the broadest sense, and you're not just looking at the business side of things. So those would be the sort of things that would come to mind.
And is that the advice you give to your son as well?
Yeah, definitely. Although he did do a law degree, but he isn't a lawyer. So there you go. That proves my point, really, isn't it?
And finally, so we've spoken about obviously the platform which I'm launching, the Women in Ports, and what I want to do, the ambitions wise for where I want it to be. In 3 words, according to you, what should Women in Ports be? What should it be?
Okay. I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Just
3 words. I mean, Charles had the same issue.
I know.
I think you gave it 2.
I guess because I've used it a few times, and I think you use it as well, authentic, impactful, and I would also say inclusive. I mean, that seems a little bit obvious, but for me, it's about making sure that we're not just talking as a group of women about this. We're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
We're talking to all, both men and women, but we're also broader social diversity, broader ethnic diversity, because this is about, let's make our sector the best it can be. So whilst your mission is absolutely, as I said earlier, mission critical to make sure that we sort of get the balance better, it's across the piece. It isn't just about gender.
Absolutely. This is something I think you and I both share that passion about it being as inclusive, but it is the best. I love it. I think it's one of the best sectors. I wish I had more opportunity at school to know about it. I just didn't, but that's changing now, right? Like that's changing so much. I see so much more in schools. I have a 7-year-old niece and a 4-year-old niece. They will be having some sort of port talks within their schools now. And that's a good thing, right? So I feel like maybe we're in the right direction.
We're going in the right direction. Definitely, we've got to aim at the next talent pool. So right from school, right the way through your college, apprenticeships across the piece. We do port tours regularly. We do talks in schools. So all of that, I would hope, improves the messaging. But it is about messaging because there are no barriers.
Absolutely. But thank you so much, Pamela. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed talking to you today. And so this is another episode of Women in Ports, and goodbye.